Ladies and gentlemen, this is huge. An article in The Independent: CIA director suggests Hillary Clinton could face criminal prosecution as part of Obama Russiagate investigation. Again, this is an article in The Independent, and it cites the current Central Intelligence Agency chief, John Ratcliffe. In addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, and to my super chat thank you, there is a grand jury in Florida. The grand jury now is looking at the declassified Director of National Intelligence records on how Clinton and others set up and framed Trump. Then there's the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, declassified HPSCI report on manufactured Russia hoax. That's also part of the DNI HPSCI report. The DNI declassified documents, and new declassified Durham probe sheds additional light on Clinton campaign effort to falsely tie Trump to Russia. These are all government documents that have been declassified from John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, Chuck Grassley, and other Republicans were a part of this. This is huge. It's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Might be happening 10 years too late, but it's finally happening. Hit subscribe to this channel. Check this out. This is huge.
Tulsi, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report.
The grand jury in Florida, or numerous grand juries, are looking at almost certainly the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence report, the Durham Probe Annex, and the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassified. All of this points to funding. There's a money trail. The DNC and Madam Secretary's campaign paid a Federal Election Commission fine for the Steele dossier. Basically, everybody involved in the Steele dossier committed a crime. That's pretty much what took place.
There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory.
My energy bill dropped.
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign.
Again, there are numerous grand juries. It's already public record. One in Florida, according to reports, that are looking at conspiracy statutes, and they're almost certainly being given almost certainly all of this information. So this is not just information that you're going to hear that you might have heard before. This is part of future indictments before November of 26. So we have the next year full of President Trump indicting people who potentially committed crimes, almost certainly committed serious felonies.
There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election.
Not one vote was altered. Not one vote. Not one person was influenced by Russia or anyone else. Not one. And the claim that they interfered, if you're making that claim, you have to prove that one person out there in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, one of the swing states, saw a bot on Twitter or a Facebook ad, because that's the only thing they had, or read the DNC emails and then said, I'm voting for Trump. Okay, that's not the way a Democratic voter operates. Even independents are not going to be like, well, you know what? Well, actually, maybe, but that's if the corruption within the Democratic Party is revealed, and then they blame Russia for telling you how corrupt Democrats are, and then people say, well, I'm not going to vote for this corrupt political party, That's not interference by another country. That's the corruption that exists within the Democratic Party or Republican Party. Democrats would rejoice if any country exposed internal emails showing Republicans cheating a candidate, but the Republicans don't do that. They don't. That's not politics. They don't kick out, like, they would never kick, like, Trump. They would never remove Trump. And number one, he wouldn't have cognitive issues the way Biden did, but like the way that Democrats, Biden won his primary, then they prevented him from running for re-election. That would never happen. It would never happen with Trump or Republicans. That's not the way they do things. The Democrats, they've totally forgotten about that. It's totally normal. And so the way the Democrats work is they'll cheat Bernie Sanders. The populace finds out that they cheated Bernie Sanders in 2016. The whole thing is a farce. But because we found out it was a plot by another country to inform us of how corrupt Democrats were. So, I mean, it's like so absurd. The whole thing is so absurd. But not one person, there's not one person that has ever stated in the history of this country that they saw either the DNC emails or a Facebook ad and said, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. That's never happened before.
On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee oversight report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee oversight report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote-unquote, unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment.
The felony, the crime is, these are conspiracy statutes. They conspired. When people say, well, you know, I read all these articles so you don't have to, from lofty national security experts, quote unquote, or never Trump Republicans, they're hilarious. Well, I mean, they had to rush everything. I mean, there was such a scare that a foreign power was trying to influence our life. The polls showed that Clinton, I mean, there were predictions that Clinton was going to win in a landslide up until the moment the day that she lost. Absolutely nobody, there's no public record stating that Democrats were fearful of any foreign operation. The whole thing was a fabricated revision of history. It was historical revision that took place within hours or days of a cataclysmic loss. Democrats went from the most confident, overzealous, gleeful. Overconfident is not the word. They were just walking on air. They were just so giddy and happy, and they couldn't wait for Clinton to defeat Trump in a landslide of historic margins. And then they lost. And the DNC emails, the campaign emails showed that they wanted to elevate Donald Trump. They literally wanted to elevate Trump. So how on earth could Clinton's campaign want to elevate Trump and the Russians want to elevate Trump at the same time? The whole thing was fabricated. These are conspiracy statutes. When people say, well, what was the crime? They had to find out if Trump was working with the Kremlin. There was zero evidence. No money trail. There was a money trail for Uranium One. No money trail, no videos, no audio, no nothing. Okay, Brennan had all of this at his disposal. He had every opportunity. The CIA, the NSA, the FBI could have easily found out through the surveillance they already had of Trump's campaign if anyone was working with Russia. They feigned ignorance. They needed a pretext to set up and frame Trump. They used bureaucracy and people who were willing to suspend logic. There are still people willing to suspend logic. They truly think, actually, they know very well that Trump was set up, but they have to fabricate the myth that Trump, well, we didn't know if he was working. You could, if you're still perpetuating the Russia hoax, please understand that you could do that with any president. If a Democrat wins in 28, which almost certainly will not happen, there's like a 99% chance either J.D. Vance or Rubio will win, and, unless you think AOC or Newsom could win, which isn't happening, almost certainly, okay? But you could do that with any incoming president. You could say, well, we have no clue. We found this dossier purchased by their political rival. We have to investigate. It's like you could literally accuse any incoming president of the same thing. It's so absurd. That's where the conspiracy statutes come in. It's a felony to use your government post and pretend that somebody was working with Russia when you had all the evidence showing he wasn't.
Stating, quote, "We don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected." Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, "We assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him." End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true.
There was no money trail. There were no videos. There were no audio. There was no recording, no documents, no nothing. They had nothing. They set up and framed George Papadopoulos, General Michael Flynn. Everything was innuendo, conjecture. This could have happened. We don't know. We have to check it out. You could do that with anybody. You could walk around. I mean, you can't be driving and a police officer said, you know what, please go ahead and stop, and walk around and they just bash your taillight. Like, what was that movie that you can't, there has to be at least probable cause, and there was no predicate crime. So a hunch? Well, we just didn't know. Brennan says we just didn't know. That's called a conspiracy. These are conspiracy statutes. They had no evidence. Simply stating we think it happened is not evidence. And Brennan stated, "Oh, I don't do evidence, I do intelligence." So, by the way, when Clinton gets indicted, she will. It'll be 10 years too late. She won't care. You think that either Bill or Hillary are afraid of being indicted? They don't care at all. They don't care at all. They have almost an entire American media narrative. Jimmy Kimmel will, oh my God, devote his life to defending, every single night, The Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, they don't get that. They're going to all circle the wagons around the Clintons, and she'll probably be nominee again. She doesn't care. So, and also, I don't dislike, like, I just, like, I look at the Clintons, I say, okay, the Bidens, they committed crimes. This is not, like, I'm not frothing at the mouth, and even though I'm fascinated by this topic, I don't dislike Hillary or Bill Clinton. I don't find them vile, or they just happen to be politicians who committed crimes, numerous crimes. Some, yes, and you can say that, yes, obviously it's vile and terrible what they did. Okay, almost certainly what they did. The point, though, is that I'm not like a morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat frothing at the mouth, hyperventilating, apoplectic. I don't care if somebody close to me wants Hillary Clinton to be president again when she becomes nominee.
Assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it. And when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report.
By the way, Paul Bartlett in Australia, thank you so very much. To my viewers around the world, in the Philippines, in Australia, everywhere, in the UK, thank you so much. In Canada, everywhere around the world, thank you. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
Report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use.
In Grenada, thank you so very much for watching. Everywhere around the world, thank you.
Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's director of national intelligence, James
Trump for life, thanks for the kind words. To my super chat again, thank you. Paul, thank you as always.
Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome. This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence.
And that's the truth. That's exactly what took place. Outgoing president or administration setting up an incoming president.
Now, it gives me very great pleasure to welcome to the show the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director Gabbard, thank you very much for this. You have thought on this legal decision this morning, a great win for America and all that goes with it, ma'am. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, it is a great day and a great victory on the side of the American people and the Constitution, and yet again, shining a light on one of the other forms of weaponization of the government against President Trump and ultimately against the American people. As you pointed out, this lawfare happened throughout the course of his candidacy and running for president in 2024. And we saw everything in the kitchen sink thrown at him as his political opponents sought to take away the right of the American people to make the decision for themselves who they wanted to serve as our president and commander in chief. The people's voices won resoundingly in this election, and this decision today once again reinforces that lawfare has no place in America.
Indeed. And, you know, from your perch now, you get to see a lot. And you've been declassifying a lot of materials, which I think people appreciate very, very much. As you look at this story, is there any doubt in your mind? You talk about the deep state.
By the way, hit subscribe if you're new. Again, there are grand juries almost certainly looking at the declassified Director of National Intelligence, the House Permanent Select Committee report on the Russia hoax, and the Durham probe annex. Okay, those are the three declassified documents that probably, you think maybe they have more than just three declassified? Of course they do. I mean, those aren't just documents. Those are troves of information that are declassified with people working for the Democratic Party, Clinton campaign, and others. Their emails, their writing, their notes, the money trail, conspiring to set up and frame Trump. This is not difficult to understand. I was telling you all of this. I mean, if you knew anything about politics, you knew that Trump was being set up and framed. This is obvious. And now it's taken 10 years. Thank God President Trump is alive to, indict anyone who committed crimes. If they committed crimes setting up and framing him, they're going to be indicted.
In many ways, I would argue the deep state started with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and it kind of moved on from there out into the CIA and out into the DNI and out into the FBI. I mean, that seems to be what your declassified materials are showing. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. The deep state, unfortunately, has existed within our government and within the intelligence community for much longer than it precedes President Obama. It precedes Hillary Clinton. I'll go back to kind of the first example in my own life that was an eye-opening experience when the deep state was activated, and specifically James Clapper had a hand in this, in the manufacturing of intelligence, claiming that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to justify, under the Bush administration, going to war. What was interesting is we look at what happened then, and I served in Iraq along with well over 1 million service members over the course of that war. And then you fast forward to the weaponization of intelligence that we just exposed recently over the last few weeks, claiming that Putin aspired to help Trump get elected in 2016, which the intelligence did actually not reflect. This was politically motivated weaponization. And the fact that James Clapper was President Obama's director of national intelligence at that time. And then you go back, more than 20 years prior to that, when James Clapper himself wrote in his book that his fingerprints were all over that fake Iraq WMD intelligence assessment. And he specifically said that he was a part of the team that found something that was not there. So unfortunately, the deep state has been firmly entrenched within our government. Under President Trump's leadership, we're getting after it and doing our very best to root out those bad actors.
I want to come back to that, rooting out the bad actors. But, you mentioned that Clapper talking about something that wasn't there. Let me just play a quick clip. We had Kash Patel on last evening. Here's what he had to say about the invasion of Mar-a-Lago, strikingly similar to what you just said about Clapper. Here it comes. Take a listen, please.
You're one.
creating a crime where one did not exist. The answer has been definitive. There was no crime. There was no predicate to go and invade Donald Trump's home. Working backwards from that point, we are going to hold people accountable who weaponized that system of justice for the following reason. It was completely false. It was completely unconstitutional pursuant to our judicial courts.
You know, Director Tulsi Gabbard, it's interesting. That was his. I asked him what the FBI was doing in Mar-a-Lago, and he said creating a crime where none existed. You made a strikingly similar comment about Clapper. I think that's really something. And I think to some extent that's what all these stories are all about. You have a political bias. It's anti-Trump, okay? It can be anti-Republican. I don't know. But the political biases of the deep state, they're creating crimes that didn't exist all across the board. But unfortunately for them, they're getting called on it. It's all coming to the surface, and it was all nonsense. That's what you're showing. You're cutting what?
And if all of media weren't basically operatives or activists for one political side, none of this would take place. Okay. The word journalist, it really doesn't exist anymore. There are very few true journalists in the country. There are very few true journalists that don't care. They just want the truth. Okay, the truth. Like the truth in politics for the past 10 years has resided with President Trump, even though that is like completely like mind-blowing statement for the morally superior among us. Trump never said both sides. He never tried to foment a rebellion. He never tried to steal Biden's victory. He never worked with Russia. These are all hoaxes and myths that have become gospel, but none of it's true. That's why the Supreme Court continually sides with President Trump. The Supreme Court, yeah, is 6-3 conservative, but it continually sides with Trump because Democrats, lower court judges, media are routinely on the wrong side of history. Okay? That's the issue here. You have an entire media apparatus doing everything possible to have tarnished and ruined Trump to no avail. He won twice, and he won after 4 years of Biden. So it's not like the rebuttal. So sometimes, well, you know what? Just because the majority, moves a certain way, that doesn't mean they're right. No, but we had 4 years of Biden. We had 4 years to go think about life with President Trump. We would rather go back to that. That's why Biden lost. We had 4 years of Biden, terrible presidency. Okay. And prices increased 22%, 21%. That's why we still have an affordability crisis with 4 years of Biden. Trump has to fix 4 years of Biden and bring back manufacturing jobs with tariffs.
40% of your staff you're cutting down. You just knocked out 37 people, they're national security people. You're getting rid of it. It sounds like you're getting rid of it.
Yes, this is first an important step that we took yesterday in announcing what I've called ODNI 2.0. This organization that I lead was created in the wake of the egregious intelligence failures around the Islamist terrorist attack on 9/11. It was created around recognizing in hindsight what happened with that manufactured intelligence of Iraq WMDs under President Bush in order to have an oversight element across the intelligence community that roots out that politicization, that ensures that the intelligence that's being collected is being integrated. The left hand is talking to the right hand, and ultimately that the President of the United States is getting intelligence products that are timely, that are relevant, and that are apolitical and objective. So what I found in my organization that I'm leading currently was that there were a lot of pockets where the deep state actors were very entrenched and were politicizing their centers or their positions either against the American people, using their authorities to force censorship on Americans, for example, under the Biden administration who dissented with Biden's policies, or those who essentially were in positions where they're creating intelligence products and inserting their own partisan political opinions and views in the intelligence documents. It's very simple. The mandate the intelligence community has is to find the truth and to tell the truth. We see in too many cases, not only in ODNI, but across the intelligence community, that is not the case.
Director Gabbard, do you think that you will be able to say after a certain point in office, certain time in office, that you got rid of all those people in the so-called deep state in the intelligence world who schemed against Donald Trump with respect to Obama and Hillary and Russiagate and all the hoaxes and the invasion of Mar-a-Lago? I know you're paring back their security clearances. I know you're cutting back on staff. Do you think you'll be able to say at some point you got rid of all of them?
Hey, it's Adam with Vantage.
Well, Larry, I'm not at all naive to, again, what we just talked about, how deeply entrenched the deep state actors are. And when we talk about the deep state actors, it's a term that's commonly used. Maybe folks don't always know who or what we're referring to. What I'm referring to are those who sit within our government, yes, within the intelligence community, but I can tell you as I speak to my colleagues in the Department of Justice and the FBI and these other agencies, there are deep state actors across the federal government, and they are people who, like Vindman, for example, who believe that their actions, their views are more important than those of elected leaders, duly elected by the American people, like the President of the United States. These are dangerous people because they believe their views and opinions supersede the United States Constitution that they all swear an oath to uphold, to support and defend, and that their views and opinions supersede those, again, who are elected by the American people, specifically the President of the United States. So I'm going to do my very best every day that I have the privilege of serving our country in this role under President Trump's leadership to root out those bad actors and to try to bring about that institutional change so that this is not something that the American people are continually faced with.
And she's doing a phenomenal job. Okay, we went from James Clapper to Tulsi Gabbard. We went from John Brennan to John Ratcliffe. This is John Ratcliffe talking about the upcoming indictments of Clinton and others.
Is the current director of the CIA, once again, John Ratcliffe. Director, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Great to see you, Maria. Great to be back with you.
And thank you for all of your truth-telling over the years. We will speak with Devin Nunes, who opened this up wide so many years ago. But I want to get your reaction to what we're seeing now with Tulsi Gabbard highlighting the truth here, as you have done so many years ago.
Well, Maria, before the intelligence community assessment that DNI Gabbard was talking about, and before Devin Nunes' report about that intelligence community assessment, before the Mueller investigation, before Crossfire Hurricane, there was this. In the summer of 2016, U.S. intelligence intercepted Russian intelligence talking about a Hillary Clinton plan to falsely accuse Donald Trump of Russia collusion, to vilify him and smear him with what would become known infamously as the Steele dossier. And Maria, this intelligence was so explosive that John Brennan briefed President Obama, Vice President Biden, Jim Clapper, James Comey, the entire national security team, telling them about this Hillary Clinton plan. Again, but think about this, Maria. That was in August of 2016, and yet it wasn't until more than 4 years later, in October of 2020, when I found, after an exhaustive search, John Brennan's handwritten notes and the underlying intelligence behind it that revealed exactly what happened. So for a 4-year period of time, the truth about the origins of the Russia collusion hoax was hidden from the American people. And unfortunately, Maria, as you recall, those same people.
So these are handwritten notes, allegedly by Brennan, and they have all the handwritten notes. They have handwritten notes allegedly from Comey. So they have all the handwritten notes. They have all the same people who said, well, the intelligence communities thought Trump was. Well, the same intelligence community now has declassified documents showing that they lied. Just like they lied about WMD, they lied about the Gulf of Tonkin, they lied. And so now we're finally coming to terms with the fact that, yeah, people set up and framed Trump, and now they're going to be indicted.
People were already at that point in time onto their next hoax, the Hunter Biden laptop. This was a month before the 2020 election. And unfortunately, what we saw with Joe Biden's election was another 4 years to be able to continue to bury the truth. And so it's only now, with Donald Trump having been reelected, that through DNI Gabbard, myself, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, all of this intelligence, all of this evidence that's been hidden and buried from the American people is finally coming to light.
Yeah. We just showed a picture of John Brennan's notes, and I want to go back to those because you just referenced them. These are handwritten notes that John Brennan took during that meeting with Obama and the other top lieutenants, where he writes that Russia is aware of the Hillary Clinton plan to tie Donald Trump to a Russia story.
So everything that he said in every one of the depositions of testimony was a lie. All the congressional testimony was a blatant lie. We knew that even before his handwritten notes. We already knew Brennan was lying. But now they all have the notes. They have everything else. Like, when you go, it's 10 years. It took 10 years to go from John Brennan to John Ratcliffe. It took 10 years to go from James Clapper to Tulsi Gabbard. It took 10 years to go from James Comey to Kash Patel. So Rome wasn't built in a day.
And these notes is something that you highlighted many times, that Devin Nunes highlighted many times. Is this what you're saying was hidden, these handwritten notes and the obvious story right then and there in the meeting with President Obama, where John Brennan was writing notes down as far as what he was telling and discussing with that team?
Well, think about it, Maria. During that 4-year period of time, think about the countless interviews that Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Jim Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan gave to the public, and testimony that they gave under oath about how Russia was involved in our election. And not one time, not a single time, did they ever reference what became verified intelligence, a Hillary Clinton plan. Verified, Maria, because in 2020, Hillary Clinton's own campaign manager took the oath under penalty of perjury in the trial of Michael Sussman and was asked about this plan and said, yes, there was a plan, and Hillary Clinton personally approved it. So all they did was talk about the fake Steele dossier, but never talked about the true intelligence, the true origins of the Russia collusion hoax, was that this was a Hillary Clinton campaign scheme. Yeah. Really incredible. And, Devin Nunes, your next guest, truly an American hero trying to bring these things to light. And again, now we have the opportunity to do exactly that.
Yeah, he sure is a hero, and so are you, Director. Look, our audience knows this, thanks to you and thanks to Devin Nunes. Our audience is well aware of what took place here, but we want to see accountability. Many of the statute of limitations have expired. It's been almost 10 years for many of these folks who did.
So there are no statute of limitations, he says, pertaining to conspiracy statutes in this case. Check it out.
But John Brennan testified to Congress, and so did Hillary Clinton, within 5 years. I think it was in 2020, right, and then again in 2021. Are those statute of limitations still live? Tell me if, in fact, we could see a criminal prosecution here, as you just the other day, 3 weeks ago, have in fact referred criminal referrals to the DOJ.
Well, Maria, so part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But what hasn't come out yet, and what's going to come out, is the underlying intelligence that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice, that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims, by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to. And you're right, Maria. John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. All of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is frankly completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects. And so, you know, Pam Bondi does have a strike force. It is a different Department of Justice, a different FBI, and an opportunity to look at how these people really did conspire to run a hoax, a fraud on the American people and against Donald Trump's presidency. And so coming forward, we understand that they did this, but now we need to understand how they did this. And I think that's why you see the left losing their minds over this, Maria, saying, why are you spending time? This is vindictive. You're going back. This is Donald Trump, you know, seeking
I love when people say, gosh, we don't want to enter a world where it's a tit for tat type thing and there's retribution. It's like, you started this. You start this. Oh, so only Trump should be set up and framed, and the people who set up and frame him, who committed crimes, they shouldn't be held accountable. Only Trump should have the entire American government, media, late night, everything, Hollywood, leveled against him for 10 years. And if he finds people committed crimes, he should not indict those people. Oh, okay. That the only way for this to stop is for the people who created this madness to face legal repercussions.
Retribution. It's not. Donald Trump's election by the American people was a statement, Maria. They said to everyone, we know what you did to Donald Trump, and we reelected him because we know this was all fake. We know it was a hoax. Now we want to understand how you did it so that it can't happen again. And that's what this declassification process that we're undergoing right now, what's going on, why it's so important, and why there can be accountability and preventability to prevent these same people that did it in 2016 with the Steele dossier, with the Hunter Biden laptop in 2020 from doing it again in the future.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
Director, one other question on this. Tulsi, as well as President Trump, used the word treason. Is there a statute of limitations on treason?
Well, Maria, what I would say is this, is there is no doubt in my mind that the people that we just talked about conspired. They conspired against President Trump. They conspired against the American people. And so I'll leave it to Pam Bondi and our Department of Justice, Kash Patel and our FBI to investigate the conspiracy to do what and what charges that they're capable of bringing. But again, I don't think statute of limitations are going to impact, because in a conspiracy, Maria, the statute of limitation doesn't start to run until the last act in furtherance of that conspiracy. And Maria, part of why this is so important is the people behind this are still furthering the conspiracy. They're refusing to admit or acknowledge what they did in 2016 and what they did in 2020 was wrong. And so I think that's why this is so important and why I'm excited about what the American people will see very shortly and what's to continue to come.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there is no statute of limitations for this, okay? There is no statute of limitations. The statute of limitations, first of all, they testified, Clinton and Brennan and others testified within the last 5 years, but there's no statute of limitations for conspiracy in this case, because they're still furthering the conspiracy. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new, to my super chat, thank you. If I didn't thank you, I appreciate your super chat. Thank you. I'll see you this evening for either an upload or a live stream. God bless you all. Hit subscribe. I'll see you later this evening for an upload of the live stream. Go ahead and please watch the channel. And